His plan was to have all the girls in school. Not until he met her. At Chorin University, Stephen was more than just a name, he was a phenomenon. He was tall with perfectly sculpted features, sharp hazel eyes, and an effortless confidence. Stephen was the guy every girl dreamt about and every guy secretly wanted to be. He had the grades, the charm, and the looks, a perfect feature that made him the king of campus. But Stephen didn't just enjoy his popularity, he had a goal. A foolish, childish, yet pride-fueled goal. He wanted to date every beautiful and popular girl in the university. To him, love wasn't real, it was just a game, and he was always destined to win. "Man, who's next on your list?" his best friend, Michael, teased as they lounged near the campus fountain. Stephen smirked, his confidence oozing. "One at a time, Mike. Can't rush perfection." "Legend," Michael said, shaking his head in admiration. The game began in Stephen's first year, and his first target was Rose. Rose, the first conquest. Rose was delicate and shy, with a quiet presence that set her apart. Her most striking feature was her long, silky black hair that tumbled past her waist like a river of ink. Stephen saw her struggling to carry books one day near the library and swooped in like a knight in shining armor. "Need a hand?" he asked smoothly, flashing a smile that made girls weak at the knees. Rose blinked up at him, cheeks flushing. "Oh. I am okay. You don't want to break your back over these, do you? Here, let me." Stephen took the books before she could argue. "Besides, I'd be a terrible person to let someone so pretty struggle." Rose turned beet red, stammering out a soft "thank you" as Stephen walked beside her. Over the next week, Stephen turned on the full force of his charm. Compliments, surprise coffees, and stolen glances had Rose completely falling for him. "You're really special, Stephen," she whispered one evening as they sat near the fountain, her eyes shining under the moonlight. Stephen only smiled, but in his mind, the game was already over. A week later, he ended things. "It's not you, Rose," he said casually, not a hint of remorse in his voice. "I'm just not ready for anything serious." Rose's face crumbled. "But, you said you liked me." Stephen shrugged. "Things change." He walked away without looking back, leaving her shattered. That night, Michael and the guys applauded him as they sat in their usual spot in the cafeteria. "You're a legend, man." Michael laughed. Stephen grinned. On to the next. Lisa, the challenge. If Rose had been easy, Lisa was the exact opposite. Lisa was the campus queen, beautiful, sassy, and unapproachable. Every guy who tried to woo her ended up humiliated. She was untouchable, and Stephen loved a challenge. "You'll never get her," Michael warned. "Lisa eats guys like you alive." Stephen smirked. "Watch me." To make things interesting, Stephen placed a bet. "If I get Lisa to date me, you all owe me dinner for a month. If I lose, I'll pay up." The guys agreed, laughing as though Stephen had already lost. The first time Stephen approached Lisa, she barely looked at him. "You're Stephen, right?" she said, raising an eyebrow. "Please. I don't date playboys." "Who said anything about dating?" Stephen teased, his grin infuriatingly charming. "I just thought a queen like you deserves a little company." Lisa rolled her eyes. "Try harder." Over the following weeks, Stephen did. He appeared at her favorite coffee shop, complimented her outfit in passing, and even defended her during a heated class debate. Lisa, for all her sass, began to take notice. Finally, one day, she sighed. "Fine. One date. Don't make me regret it." The guys were stunned when Stephen announced his victory. Michael groaned, "Unbelievable. You're like magic, man." Stephen and Lisa's relationship was fiery. Lisa never let him get too comfortable. "You're late," she said on their third date, arms crossed. "It's 5 minutes, Lisa," Stephen replied, amused. 5 minutes too long. "You're replaceable, you know." Stephen laughed. "Only if you find someone half as charming as me." As always, once Steven got what he wanted, he ended it. "You're too much work, Lisa," he said coldly. "It's exhausting." Lisa's eyes flashed with anger. "You'll regret this, Steven. Mark my words, you are just a stupid dumb idiot." Jenny and Jeanette. Next came Jenny, a sweet, soft-spoken girl who adored Steven like a puppy. He dumped her with a cruel line, "You're too short for me." Jenny's voice broke as she whispered, "Why would you say that? I thought you liked me." Then there was Jeanette, a confident, statuesque model. Steven ended things by saying, "You're too tall. I feel like I need a ladder to kiss you." Steven laughed it all off. Girls came and went, and his friends continued to praise him like he was some kind of hero. But cracks were beginning to show. The girls talked, and whispers spread across campus. "Steven's just a player. Stay away from him." Still, Steven didn't care. He was winning. Or so he thought. Jessi, the game changes. Everything changed when Jessi arrived in Steven's second year. From the moment she stepped on campus, Jessi turned heads. She was beautiful in an understated way, sharp eyes, confident strides, and a quiet strength that radiated from her. But it wasn't just her looks, Jessi had a reputation. Whispers surrounded her, rumors of a scandal at her former university involving a professor. Jessi ignored the gossip, walking through campus like she owned it. Steven first saw her sitting under a tree, a book in her lap. Sunlight played through her hair, and Steven, for once, was stunned into silence. "Who's that?" he asked Michael, pointing her out. "That's Jessi," Michael replied. "And don't even think about it. She's different. She'll tear you apart." Steven smirked, masking his nerves. "We'll see." But when he approached her for the first time, Steven got a taste of his own medicine. "Hi, you're Jessi, right?" "I'm Steven." Jessi glanced up, unimpressed. "And? I thought we could grab coffee sometime," Steven said, turning on his charm. Jessi snapped her book shut. "I know who you are, Steven. I'm not interested." Steven blinked. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." With that, Jessi stood up and walked away. Michael and the guys erupted in laughter when Steven told them. "She shut you down." Michael cackled. "The king has fallen." For the first time, Steven felt rattled. Jessi wasn't like the others. He tried again and again, leaving her notes, complimenting her intelligence, offering to walk her to class. Jessi rejected him every time. "You don't get it, do you?" Jessi said one day, exasperated. "I'm not a prize to be won, Steven. You can't charm your way through life." Her words hit him harder than he expected. For the first time, Steven began to question himself. Steven wasn't used to failure. Jessi's rejections chipped away at the armor of his arrogance, and for the first time, he questioned whether he could charm his way through life as he always had. "I'm telling you, man, she's impossible," Michael said, shaking his head. "Cut your losses. You've got nothing to prove." But Steven's pride wouldn't let him quit. Jessi wasn't just another girl anymore, she was a challenge, and he was determined to win her over. However, Jessi was different. She wasn't impressed by his looks, his charisma, or his smooth words. Instead, she seemed almost amused by his efforts. "You really don't give up, do you?" Jessi said one afternoon as Steven intercepted her outside the library. "Not when I see something worth fighting for," Steven replied, flashing his trademark grin. Jessi raised an eyebrow. "That's your problem, Steven. You think people are prizes to be won. I'm not on your list." Steven laughed, though it sounded hollow even to him. "Maybe you're not a prize. Maybe you're just special." Jessi shook her head, a hint of a smile tugging at her lips. "You don't even know what that means. Come back when you figure it out." Her words lingered long after she walked away. For the first time, Steven felt something he didn't recognize, uncertainty. What Steven didn't know was that Jessi had a plan. Over the weeks, Jessi had quietly reached out to the girls Steven had hurt: Rose, Lisa, Jenny, Jeanette, and a handful of others who had fallen victim to his games. At first, some of the girls were hesitant. "Why would we help you?" Lisa asked, arms crossed as she leaned back in her chair. "What's the point?" "Because Steven needs to learn that his actions have consequences," Jessi replied. "And because we all deserve better than what he gave us." Rose, still hurt but eager for closure, nodded. "I'm in. He ruined my first year, I'd love to see him taken down a notch." The others agreed, and Jessi's plan took shape. The confrontation. It happened in the cafeteria on a Friday afternoon, when the room was packed with students. Steven strolled in with Michael and the guys, completely unaware of the ambush waiting for him. "Dude, why's everyone staring at us?" Michael whispered, looking around. Steven shrugged. "They always stare. Perks of being me." But as they approached their usual table, Steven froze. Sitting together at a table in the center of the room were all the girls he had used and dumped. Rose, Lisa, Jenny, Jeanette, they were all there, with Jessi standing at the head of the group, arms crossed. "What the?" Steven muttered, his confidence slipping. The cafeteria fell silent as Jessi stepped forward, her voice steady and sharp. "Surprised to see us all in one place, Steven?" Michael backed away, muttering, "Good luck, man," and leaving Steven to face the music alone. "Jessi, what is this?" Steven asked, trying to keep his voice calm. Rose stood up first, her voice trembling with anger. "You lied to me, Steven. You made me think I was special. And then you threw me away like I was nothing." Lisa was next, her tone icy. "You made a bet about me." "A bet, Steven. Do you know how humiliating that was?" Jenny's voice broke as she spoke. "You called me too short. Do you know how much that hurt?" Jeanette added, "And I was too tall, right?" "You're pathetic, Steven." One by one, the girls confronted him, their voices filled with pain and anger. The crowd watched in stunned silence, some whispering to each other, others recording the scene on their phones. Finally, Jessi stepped forward, her eyes locked on Steven's. "This is what happens when you treat people like games, Steven. You might have thought you were winning, but all you've done is hurt people." Steven stood frozen, unable to respond. For the first time, he saw the pain he had caused, real, raw, and undeniable. The girls walked out one by one, leaving Steven alone in the middle of the cafeteria, the weight of their words crashing down on him. Steven's reflection. The confrontation haunted Steven for days. He couldn't sleep, couldn't focus in class, and couldn't shake the image of Jessi and the girls standing together, united against him. For the first time, he felt ashamed. He replayed every relationship in his mind: Rose's shy smile, Lisa's fiery wit, Jenny's sweetness, Jeanette's confidence. He had taken all of it for granted, leaving behind nothing but broken hearts and bitterness. Steven began to change. He sought out each girl he had hurt, apologizing with sincerity he didn't know he had. To Rose, he said, "I was selfish and immature. You didn't deserve what I did to you. I'm sorry." To Lisa, he admitted, "You were right. I treated you like a game, and it was wrong. I regret it." To Jenny, he said, "You're amazing just the way you are. I was a jerk, and I'm so sorry." Each apology was painful, but it felt like a step toward redemption. The rescue. One night, Jessi was walking back from the library after a late study session. The campus was quiet, the only sounds the rustling of leaves and the distant hum of traffic. As she turned down a dimly lit path, a group of guys emerged from the shadows. They were older students Steven had humiliated in the past, and they had heard about his interest in Jessi. Jessi watched in shock as Steven fought with a determination she'd never seen before. When the last guy fled, Steven stumbled over to her, blood trickling from a cut on his forehead. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice shaky but steady. Jessi nodded, her hands trembling. You fought them for me." "Of course I did," Steven said softly. "I'd do anything for you." Tears welled in Jessi's eyes as she helped him walk to a nearby bench. "You're hurt," she whispered, her voice filled with worry. "I'm fine," Steven said, brushing it off. "As long as you're safe." In that moment, Jessi realized something she had been denying for weeks: she liked him. The real him. Not the cocky player he used to be, but the man he was becoming. Few years later, Steven and Jessi's relationship grew slowly but steadily. He supported her through every challenge, and she gave him the emotional grounding he never knew he needed. After graduation, they moved in together, building a life full of trust, laughter, and love. Years later, on a warm spring day, Steven stood at the altar, watching Jessi walk down the aisle in a flowing white dress. "You look beautiful," he whispered as she joined him. Jessi smiled, her eyes glistening. "And you look like someone I'd marry." As they exchanged vows, Steven thought back to the arrogant boy he used to be and the journey that had brought him here. "I thought love was a game," he said during his vows. "But you taught me it's so much more. You taught me to be better, and I promise to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of you." Jessi smiled through her tears. "And I promise to always keep you on your toes." As they kissed, the guests erupted into cheers. Steven and Jessi had found their happily ever after, a love built not on charm or games, but on mutual respect and growth. The end.